Well, do you have a program? You can't tell the players without a program. I remember hearing that often when I would go into a baseball game or a football game, and there'd be these colored, glossy magazines full of ads, of course. And if you wanted, you'd buy them, and it had pictures of the players with their numbers and such. And I can't help but think of that sometimes. I'll be reading a mystery book, for example, and there are so many characters that I feel like I should have started a flow chart. This is kind of like that. When we talk about Tyndale, this was an incredibly intense moment in history. In the early 1500s through the mid 1500s, it was still 100 years away from the King James Version. It was still a long way away from having the Bible in English where people could actually access it easily. And the governments of the day were fighting it, as was the Catholic Church. And again, if you're Catholics, this is not an anti-Catholic creed. It's merely a recitation of history. No religious group comes out unscathed if you take a hard look at their history. So, we're not going to do any review. Hope you've been listening. Tyndale left Worms and moved to Marburg because their pilgrims passed through. There are pilgrimages that are standard pilgrimages to different saint sites, maybe to Rome or Canterbury, and he wanted on one of those major pathways so he could get information about what was going on, who was where the players were, because this is a moving chess. It's not like, all right, I'm in Williamson County, Tennessee, so the Davidson County sheriffs can't touch me. It's not like this. The things keep shifting around. One king gets a cold, and the next thing you know, he's done, and you've got a whole other government in town, and they switch the religion. It's constantly an issue. That's why Europe is blood-soaked because of religion. The 100 Years' War, the 60 Years' War, the 30 Years' War, all of which lasted longer than the names imply, all of the religious wars that had soaked this country, and they weren't done. There is still more to come. So the pilgrims that passed through Marburg were under the protection of Prince Philip, who was sympathetic to Tyndale and the idea that people should be able to read the scripture and have an accurate copy of the scripture. Tyndale knew he was in danger, though, from two fronts. The church, that would be Cardinal Wolsey, and the state, that would be King Henry VIII. Both of them wanted his head. Both of them were very, very powerful. Technically, King Henry VIII was also King of France at this time, although that was not ever in reality. It was an agreement made that was never enforced. So he has all these enemies around him. And about this time, something was going on in King Henry VIII's life. He and his advisor and his religious guru were arguing. They were arguing, his religious advisor, Cardinal Wolsey. I always assume people know these things. King Henry VIII and Wolsey were arguing because King Henry VIII wanted to divorce Catherine of Aragon, so he could marry Anne Boleyn. Catherine was not able to produce a male heir for him. And this was a continual problem for Henry VIII. They always blamed the women because back at that time, they did not realize women had eggs. And people were spermatists. Yes, that is a term. They believed that men produced the baby and woman incubated and grew it, and if she didn't, that was her failure. So he had a succession of wives, beheaded. He was a horrible man, just a horrible man. And the fact is, he most probably was not able to produce a male heir or any living heir for quite a while, because he was riddled with sexually transmitted diseases from all of his, I'll just say, liaisons, since I would like for this video not to be taken down. And he was passing it on. And this was the issue. Well, two giants in scholarship and academia of the day were also in Henry's circle. Two Thomases. Thomas Cranmer and Thomas Cromwell. See, kind of do need a program. This would be a great television series for, Netflix or Max or something, wouldn't it? And a lot better than a lot of them I see up there. So you have Thomas Cranmer, you've got Thomas Cromwell, you've got Cardinal Wolsey. They're all in Henry VIII's circle. They decide, however, that they're not in agreement. And so now we have another Thomas too. Thomas Cranmer and Thomas Cromwell decide to help Henry in his fight against Cardinal Wolsey so he can get a divorce from Catherine of Aragon. Well, Cardinal Wolsey also had a very powerful other person on his side, Sir Thomas. Why all the Thomases? Well, there's a More Thomas, Sir Thomas More. Many of you know that name because that name's come down in history. Very, very powerful. So now you've got a division on the Henry side between Cardinal Wolsey, Thomas More, and Thomas Cranmer and Thomas Cromwell. Just as this was going on, a servant of Anne Boleyn, the one Henry VIII wanted to marry, gave her mistress a book. Anne Boleyn, I've been reading this book. I find it very interesting. I think you would enjoy this book. And gifts of books were massively generous and very well received. And the book was called The Obedience of a Christian Man. Those of you that have been paying attention, taking notes, and are ready for the pop quiz know that name. William Tyndale wrote that book. Slipped it right into the royal palace where Henry VIII is, without realizing what they were doing. God knows what he's doing. Anne was reading it when a bishop came by to check on her, saw what she was reading, scolded her for reading such heretical literature, and warned her that her soul was in danger, and he confiscated the book. Well, Anne is Henry's, shall we say, girlfriend, and she went to Henry and batted her eyelids and said, "That mean old bishop took my book." And Henry got very angry because men will do almost anything for a pretty girl. Curious, he went and he got the book back. But then he read the book. And whether he said this because he meant it, or because he believed, or he wanted to please Anne, or because he saw the ability to use this book as a way to create a crack between him and the Roman Catholic Church, I don't know. Henry just wasn't a good guy, so I don't know. But he declared it the greatest book that any man had ever written. The same book that Bilney had been burned in the center of London while holding that book. We talked about that very recently. The same book that got him burned and that he held as he burned, now the king was saying is the greatest book ever written by man. So Henry just let it be known, because he could do that, just saying, listen, if anybody has any connection with Tyndale, let it be known I'm very interested in reading anything else he has. So they got another copy of a book to him. It wasn't Tyndale's book technically, well, at all, actually. It was Martin Luther's book, Justification by Faith. But Henry didn't read German. Tyndale read all the languages. He translated Martin Luther's book, Justification by Faith, into English, sent it to Henry. Henry loved it. And all this time, Tyndale is carrying on a written debate with Sir Thomas More. There is no way they can be face to face, because Sir Thomas More is trying to move heaven and earth to find Tyndale and kill him in the most brutal, painful, shameful ways he can think up at the time. So they're having a written debate. While he's still doing this, Tyndale translated the Pentateuch. This guy is one of the great heroes of history. And why we don't have kids walking around with William Tyndale shirts on just boggles my mind. How do you do all of this? Well, he did. Back in those days, no internet, no copying machines, and the most rudimentary of writing, quills and ink pots and the like. Took him 2 years, which a lot of people go, wow, that's a long time. Are you kidding me? I think if I just tried to copy handwriting the Pentateuch, I'm not sure I could get through it in 2 years. He then sailed to another safe place in the German republics. And remember, there were several, and they were not a unified German state at the time. He went to Hamburg, Germany, to get it printed. And the worst possible thing that could have happened. The ship sunk, and the manuscript was lost. He survived. He made it to Hamburg eventually, where 2 young English refugees of faith met him. 2 names, one of which you may have heard of, Miles Coverdale. I sure hope you have, because his story is heroic and amazing. The other is John Rogers, less known, but still very heroic. They pledged to help him reconstruct the manuscript, and 2 years later they did. And in 1531, the first English translation of the first 5 books of the Bible was printed in Antwerp. Later that year, he translated the book of Jonah and added to the front of it a broadside. Now, broadside was called that because of how big the pages were, and it has come to be used as an attack, a broadside, because that's the way they were generally used. He added a broadside against the bishops of England, comparing them to Nineveh in the book of Jonah. I'm getting so excited. I need a program to keep these people together. Back in England, high-ranking priests were deserting Sir Thomas More and Cardinal Wolsey because they could see the writing on the wall that Henry VIII was not appreciating them keeping him from Anne Boleyn, and that something was going to happen. Power, you got to choose your power player. And they were more and more were lining up with Henry VIII. Later, many of them would die in the flames when Henry VIII's daughter, Queen Mary, returned to the Catholic Church and had them burned. Like I said, one person gets a cold, one person dies, next kid comes along, switches the religion, and kills the last guys. However, Henry got enough on his side to get divorced, and that divorce did not sit well with Tyndale. And he wrote a denunciation of the king's treatment of women, not just divorce, but his treatment of women. And he wrote about the institution of marriage. He was, once again, marked as an enemy of the king. The guy that the king just said wrote the greatest books ever. Well, now he's an enemy of the king because he doesn't want to let me do what I want to do without being called out for it. He was now an enemy of the church, an enemy of the king again. He was exhausted. He was counseled, I love this, and we don't have a lot of time, but I've got to put in this little. He was counseled, please slow down. You will die if you do not take care of yourself. And his response was this: the word myself is not found in the gospel. What a guy. I mean, I'm not fit to tie this guy's shoes. Wow. He did take off 2 days every week to go into the alleyways and take care of the poor and give them any money he had and any food he had. But the end was coming. He had too many enemies, and the enemies were afoot. Before we get to him, we need to talk about John Frith. Frith was another person who was very helpful in helping Tyndale translate scriptures. We have some letters that he wrote Sir Thomas More, and John Frith took it to Thomas More, nailed him, showed him where he was against Scripture and where he was against the Gospels. He was brave. He wouldn't back down, and he personally escorted a shipment of Bible or Scripture portions in English into England, and he got arrested. But he wasn't arrested for smuggling Bibles. They weren't complete Bibles at the time, but he wasn't arrested for that. You know what he was arrested for? He had worked so hard with Tyndale for so long that he was bearded, scraggly, dirty. His clothes were all patched. So he was arrested as a vagrant. And they put him in the stocks at Reading. Now, if you're a foreigner and you don't know what the stocks are, English did this. I don't know if any other European countries did it, but America, the early colonists took it up as well. And that is where they would put you in these wooden blocks with your head and your hands sticking out to where it's most uncomfortable possible, and sitting on a very narrow bench so that it would always kind of be cutting into your rear end and legs. It was punishment also because it was done right in the middle of town where people were encouraged to come, strike you, throw feces, urine, old vegetables on you. It was considered entertainment to punish you. People came out to make fun of the hobo. And one scholar from Eton came out. Eton is a very, very high class, we would call it private school. And in Britain, it's really weird. Public schools are super exclusionary, private school, and nobody ever said the English made sense. But this one scholar came out and joined in the fun, but Frith recognized him and started talking to him in classical Greek, using the same Greek as the Iliad, let's say, and making allusions to great philosophers and such. And the scholar was stunned, and he realized, I went to school with this guy. This is my fellow. And he got the authorities, free this man. And they did. But somebody somewhere got news up the line that there's a stranger in town who knows ancient languages. And Sir Thomas More put spies on his trail. Who is this man? And what is he doing here? And our story doesn't get any less exciting next week. We'll talk to you then. Hope you're enjoying this. Let me know. info@oursafeharbor.com. Once we get past the King James Version, we'll stop this. We have a lot of other things to talk about on a Monday morning. And one of these days, if you're a film producer, please make this into a series. I'd watch it. Cheers.